story now. An uneasy weekend set to begin. David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Secretary, was barracked this afternoon at a vigil for the victims of the Manchester synagogue attack. Tomorrow, a protest is being organised by Defend Our Juries. It's an organisation protesting against the banning of the group Palestine Action. The police, including Sir Mark Rowley, have requested that these protests don't go ahead so police can concentrate their resources on protecting synagogues.
We're enormously stretched across the continual succession of protests that we're seeing, not just these. We've got a succession of anti-asylum hotel protests that we're policing that's adding into the community tension. Those and other events are adding into the sense of fear in other communities, such as Muslim communities. The volume of protest, the tension it's creating, the polarisation in communities, which has been driven by some of the toxicity online and elsewhere, all of that together is making our job much more challenging. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, showing solidarity with the community at a particularly difficult time today after the ghastly attacks in Manchester.
Well, Zoe Cohen is a supporter of Defend Our Juries, who's previously been arrested at a protest against the proscription of Palestine Action. I spoke to her a little earlier and asked her why she thought it was important that the protests go ahead, particularly this weekend.
I'm speaking to you as someone who took this action, held up a homemade sign back in August. So I don't plan to be doing the action tomorrow, but I think many people will be. It's vitally important because it's important that this prescription must be overturned, because it's the first time that a non-violent direct action group has been prescribed as a terrorist group. And that's something that is undemocratic and is a threat to all of our free speech.
However, is this the right time to do it? Lord Levy on The World at One this afternoon said, look, I don't disagree with the right to protest in this country, but just give us our time to grieve.
Yeah, I might get emotional talking about this in Easter. I feel really strongly about it. As a Jewish person who also cares deeply about people everywhere, including Palestinians and their right to life, I do think it's possible for us to be compassionate for multiple people and multiple victims all at once. I feel that we can open our hearts to the victims of multiple atrocities at one time. I'm very disturbed and appalled and grieving for what's happened in Manchester yesterday. And I'm also grieving for the hundreds of thousands of Palestinians who've been murdered, displaced and starved in Gaza. It is possible for us to be compassionate and grieving for more than one community at a time. And we mustn't conflate any criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism, because they're fundamentally different things.
The police have said, Mark Rowley has said, this is just not the time to do this. This is such a police-intensive operation. He and others are going to have to protect synagogues in view of what's happened in the last 24 hours. They are going to have to protect spaces, and they are also going to have to police this protest. And that is difficult. That is sometimes stretching the service so thin as to threaten ineffectuality,
I completely understand the need to protect Jewish communities and Muslim communities, all communities that face the threat of attacks like this. And at the same time, a decision to arrest or not arrest hundreds and hundreds of peaceful people who are just sitting in a silent vigil, because that's all it is, with a homemade sign, that's a political decision really, to arrest those people, isn't it? So the police could make a decision not to arrest those people sitting with a piece of paper or cardboard, and to put their energies into protecting communities who face actual threats.
But the police don't have that choice. Palestine Action has been prescribed by law. They don't have a choice. They have to carry out and enforce the law as it stands. Now, this is an impossible situation to put the police in.
I don't think it is impossible. Honestly, that the priority to me is so clear. Protect those people who are facing genuine threats, and the people, the retired and elderly people who are sitting holding a sign somewhere in London like that, they're not a risk to anyone, Anita. They don't need to be arrested. They can be left to protest quietly and calmly in silent vigil. They don't need to be arrested. Anyone can see that. There's no risk. There's no risk to the public.
But the Home Secretary made her decision. to prescribe Palestine Action. Therefore, the police who serve under her have no choice. So the reality of this is that they are going to have to turn out in great numbers. They are going to have to arrest people who have these placards. They don't have a say in this. They serve at the Home Secretary's pleasure. Now,
Well, perhaps the Home
what are they meant
Secretary
to
needs to
do?
make a different decision, Anita. I mean, the Home, to ban a direct action group, a peaceful, non-violent direct action group, is unprecedented in this country. Palestine Action didn't do anything that was directed at harming humans in any way. And if a government can prescribe a direct action group, then our democracy is dead. It means that there's no real protest in this country, and everyone should be concerned about that, Anita, regardless of whatever our background.
And the pleas for reflection and compassion that, actually, we are in a febrile atmosphere at the moment where people have been killed, that maybe
agree.
this is the point where, everybody steps back and just appreciates the enormity of what's happened in the last 24 hours.
It's enormous. I'm born and bred in the Northwest, Anita. I feel it deeply. It is enormous. But to be totally honest, I believe that something like 53 Palestinians were also killed yesterday, and they have names and stories too. And all lives matter. Never again means never again for anyone. And I really would appeal to you to come down to London to actually see firsthand people holding those signs in a silent vigil. That they're not endangering anyone, they're respectful. In fact, there are quite a number of Jews who've taken part in the sign because they feel so strongly that genocide is wrong. And our government has played a part in enabling the genocide, and that's wrong, and we should resist it.
Zoe Cohen, a supporter of Defend Our Juries, the UK government position is that it is not complicit in genocide. In August, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said some supporters of Palestine Action, and this is a quote from her, don't know the full nature of the group. She also said that she was defending the organisation's prescription and said it was not a non-violent organisation. What does this all mean for policing, though? Sue Sim used to be the Chief Constable of Northumbria. She represented chief police officers around the country on the subject of public order. I spoke to her earlier and I asked her how the police manage these deployments if there are multiple protests taking place.
What has to happen, Anita, is that particularly if you're looking at an organisation like the Metropolitan, they have to look at the resources that they have available. Then they have to look at the potential to call mutual aid, which means that they ask for assistance from other forces to help them out. The difficulty that there is this weekend, of course, is that due to the terrible tragedy that happened in Manchester, the police are going to be providing additional support to the synagogues and to the Jewish communities. That means you are taking away the resources that you would potentially use for policing protests. That's where the difficulty is. And that's why everybody who is running a protest or thinking of attending a protest this weekend should think twice about it.
Well, I mean, the Met Police Commissioner has directly this afternoon appealed to the organisation that is planning to have a demonstration and said, and I'll quote, by deliberately choosing to encourage mass law breaking on this scale, Defend Our Juries, which is the organisation planning to protest, are drawing valuable resources away from the communities of London at a time when they're needed most. In your experience, do those kind of appeals work, and do protests then disband?
Unfortunately not, because what tends to happen is that you have a polarisation of views. You have the police putting forward their views in relation to why a protest shouldn't happen, and you have the protesters who say, regardless of what you say, we are going to protest anyway. It is our right in this country to protest, which of course it is. However, the circumstances this weekend where whole communities are grieving, I would urge Defend Our Juries to take a step back. This weekend, the resources need to be within the communities that have been affected by this tragedy.
What are the powers that the police have around different kinds of protests? What is the kind of briefing that will be given to those who are on duty this weekend?
Defend Our Juries is supporting Palestine Action. Palestine Action, to explain it to your listeners, is a prescribed group under the Terrorism Act. That means that if you go to a protest and you are wearing slogans on your t-shirts or carrying placards supporting that group, you are committing an offence under the Terrorism Act. That means that police officers are duty bound to arrest you. It is a terrorism offence.
Right, but they may well say this is what it is to be in Britain, to have freedom of speech and to defend the rights of organisations that may say things that, you don't agree with. And what they may say is that, Defend Our Juries is about defending those rights.
I have fought for years for people's right to protest. I led the Association of Chief Police Officers on these matters. You have a lawful right to protest. People are going there knowingly breaking the law. That's the difference. The thing to do if you want to deprescribe this organisation, there is a way to do it. Write with all your evidence to the Home Secretary, who needs to put it before the courts.
These are febrile times that we are in, and the last 48 hours just reminds us how vulnerable we can be. With news that potentially one of those people killed at the Manchester synagogue may have been shot by the police, and that somebody who was wounded may have also been shot by the police, what does this do to the actual rank and file morale? How are they dealing with that?
Firearms police officers are amongst the bravest police officers in the service. They know that potentially this could happen. Those police officers did not go on duty yesterday morning with the intention of firing a firearm, let alone taking someone's life. That team will be absolutely devastated because of what happened. From what I have seen, everything was done according to what they should do. Your listeners can be reassured that this will be investigated fully. And I would just urge all other firearms officers that are listening to this who are in the country, keep on doing the splendid job that you do. You are fully trained to do it. Thankfully, these circumstances do not happen very often, but when they do, they are a tragedy for everybody involved.
So that was Sue Sim, former Chief Constable of Northumbria Police. I should say that we were speaking before it was confirmed that those two shootings had taken place from Greater Manchester Police firearms. It is now 5:45. President Donald Trump has given Hamas a